sir, we are live. We can proceed, sir. Yeah.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session on building a robust ecosystem for attracting renewable energy investment in the state of Tamil Nadu. Welcome all the delegates who are there in this session for today, and we have an expert who are working in different areas of renewable energy and who are pretty well known in this area. Before I introduce each one of them to you, let me just briefly tell that Government of Tamil Nadu is committed to mitigate the climate change effects and has been actively taking measures by bringing out policies which are conducive to promote renewable energy generation in the state. Tamil Nadu is one of the leading states. In fact, close to 17% of the total renewable installation in the country is coming from this state. Roughly around 15 gigawatt out of 89. In the wind specifically, they are the leader. 9.4 gigawatt capacity addition is there in this state. So with favorable policy in regulatory frameworks and economic incentives, Tamil Nadu has been successful in attracting private sector investments, and for many years now in the renewable energy development and related markets. So today's discussion is basically where the experts will be mentioning about what is being done, what is good, and what needs to be done to attract large-scale private sector investments in the sector. So with this, let me honor to introduce the experts who are there on the panel today. First, Dr. Mithal. Dr. Mithal is, Niraj Mithal is the current MD and CEO of Guidance. And Tamil Nadu, it's the nodal agency for investment promotion and single window for facilitation. Then we have Mr. Venkatraman from Bloom Energy. He is the CTO and EVP of engineering at Bloom, and he leads the development of the clean, highly efficient and low-cost Bloom Energy servers to generate clean power. Then Mr. Peter. Mr. Peter is from Better Sales and Service. He is currently the CEO of this company, and he has been working in the wind energy sector in the past 2 decades. He has been associated with Better for more than 10 years now. Mr. Joshua Solomon, who is the Managing Director of TPI Composites India, and he has more than 30 years of work experience in the sector, like renewables, automotive, electronics, industrial, and consumers. Then Mr. Francis Jayasuriya, who is the working as a director for India for Global and Wind Energy Council, GWEC. And it's a non-profit trade association with more than 1,300 members in the wind sector in 80 plus countries. We have Mr. Sai Baba, who is the CEO of Vikram Solar India. Mr. Sai Baba is a well-known name in this area, business leader with 34 years of experience, and he has been aiding the growth of renewable energy in India and across the globe for more than 2 decades. Mr. Sujay, last but not the least, he is the Vice President of India and APEC region at the First Solar. He is business leader with 30 years of track record in delivering growth in emerging markets by nurturing deep industry relationship and building high-performance teams. With this, let me have the honor of first inviting Dr. Niraj Mithal to give his opening remarks and set the tone for this panel. Dr. Mithal, over to you.
Thank you, Amit. First of all, let me welcome all the panelists to this CXO Roundtable. Let me also thank the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy for hosting us in this 3rd edition of REINVEST 2020 conclave. As we all know that our existence and our responsibility to future generations is linked to rapid expansion of renewable energy on Earth everywhere. And this requires a close collaboration between industry, academia, and government institutions. I am looking forward that this roundtable would be able to focus on various aspects of the ecosystem, including infrastructure, policy, the skill requirements, R&D, innovation, regulatory support so that this movement can become a mass movement and we can actually retrieve the earth from impending doom. We have a very, very impressive set of panelists here who are leaders in their own right. I, at Guidance, oversee the responsibility of getting the investors in all sectors, especially in the renewable energy, and make sure that they are able to participate in the state's contribution to this global aim. We were set up in 1992 and we offer a single window service to all our investors. Guidance has been able to actually attract investments thanks to the charismatic leadership of our Honorable Chief Minister. A large amount of investments, including in renewable energy. In the H1 of this year and in Q1 during the Corona times, Tamil Nadu was #1 state in the entire India to have attracted the largest amount of investment. Guidance allows for using the most electronic channels for setting up businesses, running businesses, and for aftercare support. One of the very nice initiatives that the state has taken is to provide a portal for all industries to be able to actually register their requests for help from any state agency. And we endeavor to solve all industries' problems within 30 days. In the recent past, roughly about 85 requests, we have cut down the processing time by about 80%. Coming to the renewable energy sector, Tamil Nadu is a pioneer, as we all know. We have added a significant amount of energy, about 1.3 gigawatts during 1920 alone, which is 10.5% more than the last year. The state is actually promoting this sector as a focus sector as we try to give a bit into climate mitigation effort. The solar policy of 2019 aims to bring about 9,000 megawatt of installed capacity by 2023, and we are seeing a lot of investment. Mr. Sai Baba is here, our other colleagues are here, Sujoy is here, who are becoming a part of this story. Players like NG, Suzlon are already here in the state. There are a lot of proactive changes which are happening to support this growth. For example, automatic meter reading has been installed so that the effort in manual collection of these reduces and things become technology enabled. On renewable energy as a manufacturing destination, Tamil Nadu has really been in the forefront of investing. In the past 1 year alone, we have attracted roughly 16,000 crores investment and an associated employment of about 14,000 people since January of 2019. In wind energy, the component infrastructure, the component ecosystem has also grown with OEMs like Vestas, Nordex, Gamesa, Enercon, TPI Composites, and they are all here because of the supporting ecosystems of gearboxes, towers, casting, molding, which is in general a strength of the state. With the excellent connectivity of Tamil Nadu, with large ports and good port infrastructure, large cranes which can handle long blades and towers, Tamil Nadu has been a focus of lot of countries, country specific countries. Their companies have made Tamil Nadu their destination for investment. Recently, offshore has also picked the interest of companies, and there are studies which are ongoing, and we will possibly see this as a sunrise area very shortly. The Honorable Chief Minister visited United States in September of 2019, and we had the good chance of visiting Bloom Energy, and it gave us immense confidence in how we could use organic resources to convert into energy through use of methane to electricity cells. And these are just some of the exciting developments that are happening in our state. We foresee that this momentum will continue, and we look forward to the panelists' views about technologies, ecosystem, and what does the state need to do to make it more convenient for investors and as an ecosystem of renewable energy to develop across various technologies, including the new ones. So over to you, Amit, with this brief introduction. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Mithal. And it is heartening to see the government support to attract private sector investors and the kind of examples you mentioned. I think Tamil Nadu is the leader, and we are sure that they will continue to have the leading position in the renewable energy. With this, I move to the panel, and first I would like to invite Mr. Venkat Raman for his remarks. Over to you, Mr. Venkat.
Yeah, good afternoon. It's pretty early in the morning, so hope I'm audible. I'm going to share a screen so that build a story. So just give me a second. Can you see the screen?
Yes, it is visible. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I think many of the panelists are coming from the renewable energy sector. So I would like to build on how we can utilize the energy, right, from the renewable sector and also supplement it. The discussion I'm going to have, or the topic of my discussion, is going to be using so-called renewable gases. They fall into two categories. One is the biogas coming from the biomass waste to power. That's one, how we can use that as a way of producing power. The other one is going to be an interesting one on the hydrogen side of it, what we are doing, which will be beneficial for Tamil Nadu also in the context of more of an energy storage. From all the work you have done in terms of bringing the renewable power, which is called intermittency, how do you effectively use this is another piece I would like to cover it. This is purely related to the technology we've been working on. To give you a little bit of background, Bloom Energy have been working on in the solid oxide fuel cell arena for nearly 17 years now. This is an on-site power generation using natural gas as the feedstock. Now we are moving into more global in terms of using other feedstocks like the biogas and hydrogen. To give a little bit of a flavor to it, I'm going to talk about two different things. One is kind of a microgrid. The microgrid is the way we classified the different renewable sources or even other sources that can coexist. What the objective here is to create the resiliency that you're looking for. Even you don't have to depend on large transmission lines. So that's the whole idea of the microgrid. As you can see on the left-hand side, we can produce power from using Bloom servers using different feedstock, and you can coexist with wind, solar, and everything else that is possible. So that's the microgrid which gives you the resiliency. On the right-hand side, you combine that with a carbon-free environment. So the area I'm going to be focusing more is going to be in terms of renewable hydrogen, so which is produced from excess renewable power. The second one is going to be the biogas, which is kind of related to the topic of today. How do you actually create the clean environment in Tamil Nadu? The other part is the carbon capture, which also fits into this. I won't be touching it in this meeting. Primarily, if you have any source of carbon, right, whether it's a fossil fuel or even biogas, you have the ability to take the CO2 out in an effective way. So we have a technology for that. Now I'm going to overlay this in two different ways. So kind of a busy slide, but I'll be focusing on two things. One, on the renewable side of it. So as I said, there are two different ways to attack it. One, we can obviously take the waste and convert it into biogas and use it for power production. In addition to that, we can also produce hydrogen as part of it. So we have different flavors of hydrogen. There is blue, pink, which is coming from nuclear power, the gold hydrogen coming from renewable, particularly the biogas, and also the green hydrogen, which can be created using the renewable energy, excess renewable energy. So you can create hydrogen as part of it, and also you can produce power. That's the basic thing. On the right-hand side, you can take the hydrogen as a storage vehicle, and you can use it in different ways. One, you can use it in transportation, or you can also use it for power production. And same thing, you can also do the energy storage using batteries. It's not precluded, but that has got a short life. So if you are thinking about the renewable infrastructure for Tamil Nadu, one way to do it is take the excess power and produce hydrogen, use this as a storage vehicle. So here's the differentiation we make in terms of the biogas. Typically, if you take the biogas which is coming from landfill or wastewater or dairy, or any of these will produce biogas. On the left-hand side, what you see is the way that typically the biogas can be used. One, it can be put in a combustion generator, but it does result in pollutions, or you can flare it. Obviously, the same problem, the methane that is coming out, if you flare it, you're going to get CO2, and also it creates other problem from terms of greenhouse gas emissions. And obviously, you can clean it up and inject the pipeline, which takes a significant amount of capital investment. What we have been thinking about is taking the biogas as is, take out some of the bad things out of the biogas and put it in the bloom systems, and you can actually produce power. So that's one way of producing the renewable power. The other one is what I talked about, hydrogen as a storage. If you do end up in excess power, whether it's coming from solar, whether it's going to be in wind, and transportation is an issue, or transmission is an issue, we can produce hydrogens. The question is, how do you actually store it? There are different mechanisms that have been developed over the years, whether you can put it in tanks and carry it to the site, or there are other means of doing it, including some of the research work has gone into creating salt caverns where you can store hydrogen for a long time. The good news is this fuel cell that we have today can be run in electrolysis mode, so you can take water or steam and produce hydrogen also. So that actually fits nicely into this framework. So you can take the excess energy, produce hydrogen, and downstream you can use it for power. One question typically is asked is why hydrogen compared to batteries? Batteries have been used for a long time. It actually does help out from a storage perspective, or a short-term storage. But if you are thinking about long-term storage and you don't want to end up in discharging something because the batteries can discharge, hydrogen has been considered as a vehicle. It can be used in different ways. As I said, it can be stored in caverns, or it can be used different mechanisms to store it and transport to produce power. So what I want to conclude here is the fact that if you're thinking about an ecosystem in Tamil Nadu, and if you do want to end up reduce the greenhouse gas emissions and you want to go into renewable energy, we can supplement the existing framework with the production of hydrogen, or the other one, we can use the biogas to produce power. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thanks, Venkat, and thanks for being right on time. And before I go to the next panelist, I would also request the audience, you have got a link where you can put your questions. And I will, if you can mention the name of the panelist, or it can be a generic questions, and then I can throw it to the concerned panelist expert. With this, I invite Mr. Peter from Battery Sales and Service. Peter, over to you.
Thank you, Amit. So I'm representing Better. We are purely in the wind industry, and I'll come back to what we do and so on. We do have a tagline to our name called "Engineering the Foundation for Future Generation," and we mean that very seriously. So what we do, we want to do in a sustainable way, thinking the next generation, but also taking it into how can we support in general the wind business for better execution and performance. We do have approximately like 15% of the world market in what we do, so we are a significant player in the market. We are a Danish / German-based company, actually coming out of Vestas, who owned us for a period of time. The Danish entity we have is having 35 years of experience in the field we operate in. And we have also operation in Sweden, where we have a heritage back to 17th century. So we have quite some good knowledge for a long time experience. And then we are in China as well since 2008. We do design work together with our customers, do castings, do machining, do painting, do sub-assemblies for the OEMs, and really try to do it in a partnership approach. The next natural step for us is entrance into India, and that's bringing me now to where I would like to explain a little. Where for me it has been surprising and a very positive journey so far. We have been looking into India for some time, of course, and then we actually kicked off our project in April this year, and that was after a workshop where also Guidance Tamil Nadu participated and gave some inspiration, and also already before we kicked off the project, started to give us advice and support. In May, we signed a MOU with Tamil Nadu to invest and setting up our company. What or why do we then look into India? And that is, we do see a gap in the market in India to close the ecosystem or to support the wind OEMs, as what we do is actually a limiting factor for the time being. So we're a little stressed that we would like to move fast. So one thing is the Indian domestic market, but we also do see India as a potential export hub, which can also support into India. And we have selected then to set up our factory in Chennai due to proximity to harbor access and these things, which is also mentioned by Dr. Mithal, as it is oversized items, it's heavy duty. So for us, it's important to have a good infrastructure, harbor access, and these things. We do bring in some knowledge in what we do and also the way we operate. I would say that is maybe just as important. We are setting up the factory in a way more sustainable way than it has been seen before in the industry. That goes both to the construction of the factory itself. It goes to the processes we're going to run, where we are optimizing also based on the existing experience we have, and then also for a better work environment for employees. In this journey, we have experienced very, very high level of support from different parties in Tamil Nadu, and especially I would say from Guidance Tamil Nadu. As mentioned before, it started already in February, where I heard Dr. Mithal speak the first time, but then his organization have really supported us with the approvals, with company registrations, with all the elements, making it as a company who are not present in India easier to get registered and on all these things. So currently we are, despite we didn't start the project before April, then we will have groundbreaking in 2 weeks from now in a Sipcot area in Chennai. So for me, that is well actually concluding for now that it has so far been very exciting and an experienced journey. Only 7 months from kicking off the project to, and I'm looking very much forward to continue the journey in Chennai. Over to you, Amit.
Thanks, Peter. And it's heartening to see that, you have taken the plunge and decided to invest in Tamil Nadu. And, companies like yours who have presence in various developed and developing market, making India as a hub for investment is definitely a good news for us. Thank you so much. We'll come back to you later on. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Joshua Solomon from TPI Composites. Over to you, Joshua.
Thank you, Amit. I'm Joshua. I represent TPI Composites. TPI Composites is basically the largest US-based manufacturer of wind blades. We are associated with all the major players and the OEMs of wind turbines, and we supply wind blades to them. It's basically a heritage from a boat building company. In fact, the founder of our company is known as the Henry Ford for boat on composites. So close to 2 decades ago, we diversified into wind markets, and our specialization is to produce only the blades, the wind blades. We do have some operations that work on composites in terms of transportation, but our major business is to do wind turbine blades. We are based in US. We are a global company. We have our footprint in US, in Mexico, Germany, Denmark. We also have in Turkey, China, and India was a new venture to us. And we are very thankful to the Tamil Nadu government. Why India? Because India has this great growth potential in terms of the wind market. So we wanted to set up this plant. And why Tamil Nadu? We did our search and our survey across the country. But finally, we decided that we're going to put our plant in 2019 January in Chennai. And needless to say, as the other panelists had mentioned, that Chennai has always been a destination and an environment-friendly location for many of the industries. Seen that in 3 decades of the growth of the Indian industries, seen that in automobiles, seen that in semiconductors, and also now in renewable energy. So the wind market in Chennai and in Tamil Nadu is growing very well. So it gives us a good proximity with our customers. It gives us good proximity with the infrastructure available. And most importantly, the kind of tremendous amount of support we are receiving from the government. We signed our Memorandum of Understanding in Jan 2019. Thanks to the guidance to the single window process, we did have a very nimble introduction of our first footprint in India. So in about 13 months, we could start our operations, which is something which is quite a good record, as we believe. And Tamil Nadu government has been very, very supportive to us. We are extremely happy. Our investors are happy. Our corporates are pretty happy in this destination. So in the days to come, we have also decided to increase our investment. And we also had this investment coming through and the plants coming through at a very difficult time. And I should again underline the fact that the guidance and the Tamil Nadu government and the proactive approach of the government has really helped us, that despite all this pandemic and all these obstructions that came in the middle of our operations, we did have the support, backup, and all that was required for us to carry on. So we actually launched our product in the middle of the pandemic. We also were contributing back to the government in terms of employment. When the pandemic was going on, we were actually hiring people and we were providing jobs. So it kind of worked as a very good win-win situation for us too. Now we are at a point where we are looking at the next phase of investment. So we are very, very happy to be here. And especially talking about Tamil Nadu, the skills in Tamil Nadu is an area where, in addition to what my panelist Peter was saying, the skills in Tamil Nadu and the industrial maturity that we see, that's also benefiting us in Tamil Nadu, because the wind industry has a very highly skilled labor force that's required. So the education level, the people availability, that's also been a very positive thing for us. So altogether, it's been quite a positive experience, and we're looking forward to. The only suggestion that we would make to the government is, as the technology of wind always grows bigger in size and it gets oversized dynamically, it doesn't stop. So we have one critical area where we make the longest blades in the country today, which is 75 meters long. And the only thing that I can think of, it gets bigger. So we need to really gear up some of the infrastructure, access to the ports and the roads. But for that, I think it's been a very positive experience for TPI Composites. Thank you.
Thanks, Joshua, for being on time and again reiterating the fact that India and Tamil Nadu both are good investment horizon and good investment destination for a company like yours, who have made investment in different countries: China, Denmark, India, Mexico, and Turkey. So we look forward to more investment. As you said that during the pandemic, you were the one who were hiring people, who were planning to make further investment. That's music to our ears. So with two gentlemen earlier speaking about the wind industry, the manufacturing setup, it is pertinent to bring on board Mr. Francis. I'm honored to invite you from Global Wind Energy Council perspective. What are your thoughts and investment perspective in Tamil Nadu? Over to you, Mr. Francis.
Yeah, thank you, Amit, and it's a pleasure to be here in this panel. As we said, I represented the Global Wind Energy Council, which is an industry trade body for wind, exclusively having 1,800 members who are working around the global for the wind sector. And we are present in China and as well as in Singapore, apart from the headquarters based in Brussels. We are having our GWEC India entity coming shortly, and this is where my role comes in here. As you know, the Tamil Nadu has been a forerunner in the wind sector, and most of the OEMs have been based out of here, as Mr. Joshua and other colleagues have been supporting here. We are trying to look into the best practices and bring the technology back in the sector, and we would like to utilize and inviting more of the, as the Prime Minister has announced that India has a renewable energy hub. We would like to invite more of the people using this platform to come to India, to Tamil Nadu in particular, and other states also. Here, the best advantage in Tamil Nadu, because we have a more skill set available, and it's been a matured market. And we have a very good skill set, not only for the OEM, as well as for the operation and maintenance part also, which is very important here. So I would say that there are a lot of areas where we can work together and invite a lot of supply chain and energy hubs to be manufacturing over here. And I'm sure this guidance will contribute towards creating infrastructure in coming year. Another thing which I would like to say is that the now a little bit focus is coming towards offshore. If you see yesterday's in the remarkable meeting, the Danish Minister of Climate was saying that how their country, the fishermen folks, has been developed the offshore. I think that kind of environment we also have in Tamil Nadu. I think our fishermen are very good there, and I think sure with a deep knowledge in the sea, they could develop the offshore wind in the sector. And we have a very favorable condition in wind sector, in particular Rameshwaram and Tuticorin. We have a wonderful areas. I'm sure a lot of international participants are looking keen to develop in India, and they will come here, and we will be supporting Tamil Nadu in wherever it is possible here. With this note, I'll hand over back to Amit. Thank you, Amit. Yes, sir. Back to you.
Mr. Kumar, unmute, please.
Thank you, and thanks, Mr. Jayasuriya, for these comments, and also the fact that Wind Energy Council is working as a bridge between the government and the private sector to further make an investment into this sector. From wind, now it is solar, and it is no coincidence that the wind was the first renewable energy sector in the technology to propagate in the country, but then slowly and steadily solar has come up quite near to the wind, and threatening to overcome the wind sector kind of installments in the country. So with this, I would like to invite Mr. Sai Baba. Sai Baba from Vikram Solar, an Indian company, who is the second largest solar company, in fact, in India by revenue now. Mr. Sai Baba, over to you for your comments. Please unmute yourself, Mr. Sai Baba. Please unmute.
Sorry.
Thank
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Sai Baba here. I represent Vikram Solar. As Mr. Amit said, we are one of the largest solar module manufacturer in the country. We got about 1.2 gigawatt capacity plant. We have this plant manufacturing location is based out of Calcutta. Calcutta also has a port. Calcutta also has a good infrastructure. But we have chosen to expand our capacities in Tamil Nadu. I will come to that point as to why we have taken the picture. We had a large manufacturing base, but still we are going ahead and building it in Tamil Nadu. So Vikram Solar is about 14 years old company. It has been in the industry for 14 years. We started with about 14 megawatt capacity in 2008, and today we have got 1,200 megawatt, and we are actually building the capacity to about 5 gigawatt in next 3 years. This is the plan what we have. We are, we are technology is our backbone. We focus quite a lot on technology. We are early adopters of the innovative technologies all the time, and ahead of competition and able to meet the global requirements. We export to USA, Europe, and Africa, and we are also into engineering, procurement, and construction. I would like to say a little bit about Tamil Nadu because I have been connected with Tamil Nadu for over 17, 18 years now. We are expanding our capacity in Tamil Nadu by building about 3 gigawatt manufacturing plant consisting of solar modules, solar cells, and solar wafers, the entire value chain. This is probably the second initiatives I have done in my career. First being Vestas. I was involved in Vestas Energy Umaygan from 1998 till 2005, about 7 years. And when we chose Tamil Nadu as the Chennai as the base and Tamil Nadu as the base, we have had a lot of options available even at that point in time. We did complete analysis. We found Tamil Nadu is the best location, fundamentally because number one, it was the pioneer in wind sector. The first wind turbine probably was installed in India was in Tamil Nadu. It was a very small 55 kilowatt turbine. And probably for your information, Tamil Nadu, especially in one belt called Nagarkoil, is the world's largest wind installed base. In one single location, you will find gigawatts and gigawatts of wind turbines. Probably you will find a 55 kilowatt turbine to about 3 gigawatt kind of a turbine. That is possible, and you find almost all brands of wind turbines produced worldwide, all present in Tamil Nadu, running for over 30 plus years. So that's a kind of pioneering effort Tamil Nadu has put in to develop wind sector from 1980 till now. It's over 40 years. And second thing is probably Tamil Nadu is one of the most industrialized states in the country. And most enterprising states in the country, because these things are very, very important. And probably when I say enterprising, you will find Tamil Nadu entrepreneurs being present across various sectors, whether it is textiles, whether it is automobiles, whether it is plastics, chemicals, whatever the sector you say. So the enterprising culture of the people also is a very, very important thing. Why I'm saying this is, the solar industry, which is absolutely a nascent industry in India, though we are present for 14 years, all along the development has happened on the addition of installations than manufacturing. Probably the manufacturing environment is happening now. I think Tamil Nadu is leading that particular initiatives. And I strongly believe Tamil Nadu is going to have a tremendous amount of edge over many other states, mainly because, number one, it has got an excellent infrastructure. Ports are very, very important. Port and airports are very, very important because the solar manufacturing is depends quite a lot on global supply chains. And this industry is going to be more of a globalized industry where exports also will also happen quite a lot. So the port infrastructure is extremely important. I'll touch base. I'll touch one or two points. I said we have got a manufacturing unit in Calcutta, okay, and it is operating for the past 14 years. Instead of expanding there, why we are going to Tamil Nadu? The fundamental is basically that though we have a port, to export our goods from India to USA, it takes about 40 days from Calcutta to US, most of the destinations in the US. Whereas in Tamil Nadu, it takes exactly 20 days, half the time. So we are able to cut down on working capital cost. We are able to cut down on the transportation cost and all that. Same thing holds good when we are importing materials from China. It takes only half the time what otherwise it would take from having the eastern part of the country. And the second thing is the reason for choosing Tamil Nadu is the probably, I think Tamil Nadu has shown how automobile industry has been built between 1990s to 2020. I think Tamil Nadu has emerged as the large automobile hub in the country. Same way, even mobile phones and textiles, and you find industrial hubs for various industry sectors in Tamil Nadu. This is something which is unique of Tamil Nadu. We strongly believe the solar needs a large ecosystem. It uses a number of components like glass, EVA, aluminum frame. It uses chemicals. It uses silver paste, various components. With the entrepreneurial culture and with the support the government gives, we very, very proactive government. I mean, I think probably in the ease of doing business, Tamil Nadu ranks one of the topmost states in the country. And the labor environment is excellent here. So with all and proactively, I must give an example. When we were analyzing various states and which state we actually went through the 10 states assessment. We chose Tamil Nadu. And I tell you, from the time we contacted Tamil Nadu government, then we took the decision we want to go ahead with. Within 45 to 60 days, we could get everything done. And in August, we have signed the MOU. We took the decision. By March, we are commissioning our module plant, first module plant. And we are planning to commission our cell plant by May, June, the next year. So that means, in less than 10, 12 months, it is 8 to 10 months, it is possible to choose a location, secure land, get approvals, electrical connections, recruit people, and make it running and get into commercial production. The lead time to establish a unit is much, much shorter in Tamil Nadu because of the proactive administration and government. I must say that guidance is giving excellent support, Dr. Mithal and team. And, we are thankful to Tamil Nadu government. We are able to set up this unit within 45 to 60 days, thanks to the excellent support we have got from, Tamil Nadu government. Thank you very much. Amitji, back to you.
Thanks, Sai Baba, for detailing out the journey and your experience in Tamil Nadu, and also the plans for the company and which are helping the sector as a whole. Thank you very much. And last but not the least, Sujay goes the champion, First Solar, and the potential investor in TN. Over to you, Sujay.
Thanks, Amit, and like to thank MNRE and Guidance for inviting us to this session on the investment in manufacturing. A bit of a background on First Solar. We are one of the world's largest solar manufacturer of solar photovoltaics, and we are incidentally the only solar module super league manufacturer which is there in the Western Hemisphere. Our technology is thin film photovoltaic. It's very differentiated from the more popular and more prevalent China-based supply chain, which is prevalent. In terms of it offers an alternative which is higher in reliability, especially in hot climates, and it's more sustainable as compared to the silicon-based solar photovoltaics. First Solar, by the way, we're proud to mention, is the only photovoltaic manufacturer whose modules have been certified by EPAT for silver under the eco-label scheme. As a company, we are currently at about 7 gigawatts of global manufacturing footprint spread across the US, Malaysia, and Vietnam. And we are incidentally, way back in 2008, First Solar was the first company to get into gigawatt scale manufacturing. Think about 2008, the whole market was about 10 gigawatts per annum. Globally, today we are looking at about 100 gigawatts plus per annum of global supply. We are looking at expanding our global manufacturing footprint. And obviously, we've been evaluating India as one of our potential destinations for investment. Given the compression in the overall cost of the module, the freight cost as a percentage to the overall cost of the panel has now gone up to roughly about 10 to 12%. And so there is some economic trade-off around manufacturing close to large centers of demand. And India is one of the world's largest market in terms of demand. I think nobody questions the demand potential of the Indian market for renewables in general and solar in particular. So I'll give a very brief context of from a potential investor standpoint. What do we see in India, and what do we see specifically in Tamil Nadu? But from an overall country perspective, Sai Baba mentioned that the manufacturing story in India has not really taken off. We do have a lot of solar module manufacturing capacity, but that really is the back-end assembly of making modules by importing cells. And so really the completely integrated manufacturing has not really taken off in the country. And I would put it down to perhaps 3 or 4 basic reasons. One is you have to think about incentives to figure out how do you make the Indian manufacturing cost competitive. Now, this is an industry where China controls 90% of the global supply chain today. And if you have to create alternate capacity, you have to figure out policies which will make those investments compete against the China supply chain. So, what the government's currently done, I think there's been a significant rationalization in the direct tax structure in India, with new manufacturing investments now attracting 15%. That's great. The recently announced production-linked incentive scheme, although the capital outlay is very, very less in our opinion, but the scheme is well-intentioned and well-structured for attracting large-scale and fully integrated investments, which would create the self-reliance and the Atmanirbhar Bharat vision of the current government. The state-level incentives, and we've looked at, again, pretty much similar to Sai's experience, we've looked at, most of the states where we think about citing a manufacturing investment. The states have pretty much got their act together in terms of offering structured incentive packages to single window approvals for whatever is there in the domain of the state. So I think that's all good work done. The recent rationalization in labor has been also another improvement from the past very complicated labor laws which were there in India. But what are pending? Some of the things which are pending and which create those cost imbalances are really around things like a higher tariff for energy. So industrial power tariffs in India, because of the cross subsidization, are one of the highest. And energy is a big cost in terms of when you look at the cross value chain manufacturing of solar photovoltaics. Export incentives is the other thing where we would perhaps expect some policies from the government, because solar manufacturing is about scale. Unless you get to a certain scale, which is at least north of 2 gigawatts at single location, the manufacturing cost is not competitive. So, and again, going back to if you want to create scale, you have to look at investors who are willing to use India, not just for serving the local market, but also for exporting out of India. So interest costs in India are, despite the fact that the interest rates have come down, for manufacturing kind of investments are still pretty high, again, as compared to, let's say, some of the ASEAN countries or even China. And the government had discussed about interest subvention policies, but again, those are things which we believe are still in works and have not really emerged. And then the last but not the least is, as you think again about creating large-scale manufacturing, looking at exports, we need to have clarity around the SEZ policy. right? Whether SEZs in India, when somebody sits about manufacturing in an SEZ, how will they address the local market? Will there be tariff barriers? Will an Indian SEZ be treated as at par with manufacturing in another country which is offshore? Those are some of the questions I think which still require a lot of clarity from the various departments at the federal level. The other aspect of creating a local manufacturing is really around protection, and I say this because again, there is one country, China, and their dominance in the supply chain has often resulted in unfair trade practices being followed, right? So as we look at free trade, we should also look at free and fair trade. And to that extent, there has to be some protection given by the government, at least for the short term, for some of these manufacturing ecosystems in solar to incubate. Pretty much similar to the way wind evolved with a feed-in tariff protection. There was certainty of tariff, certainty of demand, all of that in the late 90s and the early part of the first decade of 2000. So I think we need a similar kind of policy incentive around how do you protect some of these investments which are being made. So there is talk about custom duty. We don't have clarity on where it is. There's talk about ALLM, similar to RLMM in wind. Again, policies which have been announced but not implemented. So there is a bit of this lack of clarity around the overarching policy which will incentivize manufacturing. And I think there is also work to be done in terms of indirect tax optimization. This industry, in terms of solar, we have an inverted duty structure on indirect taxes where our output GST is at 5%, but input GST on a lot of materials is a lot higher. And so there is that aspect of tax and the indirect taxation, which causes cost to be high, and in the inability of that cost to be passed on to the end consumer. I think we'll have to look at how do we again create a cost competitive industry. And last but not the least, I think consumer mindset is also very important. If you talk around the room to developers who are bidding for these large projects in solar, just given the nature of the way the market has evolved in solar with reverse auctions, the mindset is to look at lowest cost. Whereas I think the mindset has to change and look at lowest life cycle cost, where somebody takes into factor the operating cost, the cost of enforcing warranty on a foreign country, some of those things which will then drive people to look at and adopt locally manufactured products. And I think that is also extremely important in the context of creating a local ecosystem for manufacturing. Specifically, our experience with Tamil Nadu in the limited interactions we've had with Dr. Mithal and his team has been extremely positive. I think I would say on responsiveness, I would give them maybe 11 out of 10 as compared to some of the other states. Extremely responsive. They've been very, very well structured in their ability to provide potential investors, information around land banks, around the permitting process, the ability to handhold, ability to address queries very quickly. So I think all of that, is great. And Tamil Nadu has, as a lot of the other speakers have already highlighted, has a natural advantage in terms of skilled workforce, access to infrastructure, ports, and a very reliable power system. So I think overall, very, very positive experience with guidance as compared to with due respect to some of the other states. But I think in terms of just the responsiveness and the eagerness and the hunger to attract investment, I think we'd give them full marks. That's all I had for now. Back to you, Amit.
Thanks, Sujoy, and thanks for nicely putting together as to what has worked, what are the issues and challenges for the sector, and a to-do list for all the stakeholders and more so from the government side of it. Thank you for all the panelists for being on time, and we have good enough time to discuss some of the questions which have come from the audience and also based on the deliberations till now. I will request all the audience, there are certain questions. Please put in your chat box. There is a separate link for you, and I assure you that all the questions we have time to address to the concern. You can mention the name of the panelist, or it could be a generic question, and then I'll see and push through it. I'll start with Sujay, you first, because these are fresh things in my mind which you just mentioned. I'll also request all the panelists to switch on their video, please. You mentioned about the competition from China, other countries, and the government of India's push towards the Atmanirbhar, as they're called, self-reliant kind of a thing. So, from that perspective, how India can reduce the import dependency with this scheme, Atmanirbhar, and the various schemes which the central, the federal, and the state governments have been promoting till now, and particularly in the case of solar sector, I mean. So, how can India be more self-reliant in the solar space with the kind of Atmanirbhar which the central government is trying to push?
So Amit, thanks for that question. I think there is no one silver bullet, and I don't think there's one Atmanirbhar scheme for solar industry. I think Atmanirbhar is just a philosophy of the government, and then the federal government and the MNRE and the various other departments have to formulate specific policies which play into that philosophy and that vision. Now, there is always a price to pay for becoming self-reliant. Right, the local supply chain, any industry, whether you take auto, whether you take electronics, it takes time to develop the local ecosystem, the supply chain in terms of glass, EVA, backsheet, all of those materials which go into making a solar panel. Today, if you look at all the 10 odd gigawatts of active solar module assembly facilities which exist, they are completely reliant for the secondary supply chain on China, because that's the lowest cost alternative. And so I would say that, if we want to, as a country, create resiliency in our supply chain, at some point, there is a cost for it, right? There's a cost for that new investment to come in. There's a time taken for that cost to, the scale to happen and become eventually competitive. And so in this incubation period of the next 3 to 5 years, what will the policies be so that this incremental cost does not derail the overall, growth of renewables in the country? So at some point, the cost has to be absorbed in the system, right? And the costs could be borne by, part of it could be borne by central government in terms of some of the fiscal incentives or some of the non-fiscal incentives which they are looking at, right? Some of it has to be also borne by the end consumer, right? Today, if you look at the typical delta, and Sai can back me up on this, between, let's say, a large-scale solar plant built with Chinese modules or imported modules in general versus a locally assembled module, the difference in tariff will be about 30 paisa. Now, when you're looking at the overall cost of solar today, there is a clear window between solar and the next lowest cost alternative, right, which is coal. So even if there is a 30 paisa premium, which has to be paid by the consumer, but that creates a local supply chain, that creates additional GST collection, that creates employment. I think that has to be looked at holistically, right? But our view is that by putting tariff barriers, it's a very short-term intervention. It actually deters investment coming in. Instead of putting barriers, I think we need to think on incentives, and we need to think on how to socialize this cost of creating this Atmanirbhar or creating the local supply chain within between the manufacturers, the government, and the consumer as three stakeholders in this whole journey. And honestly, today, Amit, we don't see enough clarity to that, right? I mean, there is talks about putting tariff barriers. There is some talk about the only policy which has come out from the government today is the production-linked incentive, which, as I said, is great. But with 4,500 crores of outlay for 5 years, you're looking at 900 crores per year. That does not create a lot of megawatts or gigawatts of capacity. So I think we need to just think for the next 3 to 5 years horizon, think about a comprehensive policy. But at the end of the day, we got to realize that nothing is free in life. And to be self-reliant, you have to do some investment, and that is the price which we have to pay. And I don't think there's enough clarity around who is going to bear that cost.
Absolutely. And PLI is just the starting point. As you said, that this is a good scheme. And I think as we move forward, we learn from it. And I think a large composite program might come out of it. At this point of time, you also alluded to Sai Baba. Sai Baba, if I can bring you in, because Vikram Solar has signed an MOU to set up a 3 gigawatt manufacturing facility in Tamil Nadu. So some of the points which Sujoy mentioned, and keeping all the competitiveness globally now, how do you want and are you planning to cope with that? Sai, can you please unmute yourself? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I think what Sujay said, he absolutely touched the mark, right? Number one, everything has a cost. If you see, we have from zero, we have built close to about 35 gigawatt of solar assets in the country. But 85-90% has come from China. So this 85-90%, if you actually look at what is the kind of cash outflow which has gone from the countries, billions of dollars, substantial money has gone. So this is the kind of strategy the country has taken to promote energy generation than manufacturing. It is, and the money has gone out of the country. Okay, doesn't matter. At least we got a market today. And we have brought down the cost of solar power from 18 rupees to 2 rupees recently quoted. The question now is, we are talking about doing 450,000 megawatt by a couple of years, and about 100,000 megawatt by 2000, next 4 or 5 years. What does it say? At 2 rupees per kilowatt hour cost of power, there is no other energy source in the world which would compete with solar. Probably this 2 rupees would come down by another anywhere between 4 to 6% every year, in my opinion, either through efficiency of the solar cells modules or through the cost reduction because of the scale and volume. It is a solar revolution which is going. Very important thing is to play into this revolution and benefit out of that. How do we do that? If you get scared by Chinese capacities and manufacturing base and the cost structure, you will never win the game. Okay, like what Sujay said, there is a cost associated with that. You have to have a intent and commitment to build this industry. Like for example, if you take automobile industry, in 1980s, 90s, there was no automobile industry at all in the country. We have built in the last 25, 30 years, an industry which is enviable by the global players. Today, we are not only manufacturing competitively within India, and we are also exporting out of India. And we are able to compete with other automobile manufacturers on a global scale. How did it happen? It has happened mainly because 3-4 things they have done. One is we have built ecosystem in different hubs. Tamil Nadu has got one hub, and Gurgaon has got another hub. So like these hubs have been built where the entire ecosystem was built, and the barriers were set in, for some period of time, so that when you actually build the scale out of the local market and start exporting, you create this environment of manufacturing in the first place. So, and you invited the global players to come and establish units here. They have all come because there is a protected market for next 5-10 years. So that actually paved the way and created the competitiveness in the industry. I think something similar which we need to do. The opportunity is phenomenal. $60 to $100 billion in next 5 to 10 years. The market size. I don't think any other sector will give such a kind of opportunity, global level. It's maybe 3-4 times larger than this. That kind of an opportunity no other industry will give. It has to be done in this way. And like what Sujay said, you need to create the entire infrastructure and environment. The reason why we have chosen, as I have already explained, Tamil Nadu has been successful with textiles, successful with automobiles to build the ecosystem, and successful with the motors and pumps, valves and all that in Coimbatore, engineering industry. We strongly believe it is very much possible in Tamil Nadu to build this ecosystem and create a very, very large solar market manufacturing base. There are 3-4 investments have to come in, like anchor kind of an investment. One is, we took the bold step, Vikram. We are putting up a 4 gigawatt, 3 gigawatt manufacturing base. I think hopefully First Solar also will take the decision positively and put it up there, in Tamil Nadu. With that, it will spiral the growth of manufacturing for solar, not only in Tamil Nadu, but whole India. That's what I see. And what is that which we require for this to happen? basics customs duty protection. It has to be a incentive structure where the cost base differential of 30% between China and India has to be made good, supported for about 5-7 years. That is something which is required. Then the third thing is the investment in terms of building the infrastructure. Like, for example, Saint Gobain is there in Tamil Nadu. We should give incentives and encourage Saint Gobain to manufacture solar glass. It's a very, very large portion of the entire module which goes in. And aluminum frames and all that. Aluminum frames and all that. Exactly what we do.
Sai Baba. So that's what is required, and I'll come to you later on. But Sujay, you wanted to say something, please, quickly. Yeah?
I just want to very quickly say one thing, Amit, that China didn't build this whole ecosystem of manufacturing by doing L1 bids. So we got to think about our demand and how do you discover demand. Right now, even in the 90s and 2000, when the whole wind industry developed, and there are enough wind players on this panel, there was no concept of L1 bidding. Because with this whole L1 and reverse bidding, what you're doing is nobody has certainty of revenue or cost, right? So to me, if you're looking at creating a manufacturing ecosystem, the procurement policy also has to change and move away from you can discover price, but then you have to set the right parameters. Today we are bidding gigawatts and gigawatts of solar with a one-page specification on the modules, just one page, right? So the entry barriers are very low. And I'm not saying you create entry barriers, but create qualification requirements, create the relevant quality standards. But at the end of the day, if we go with this L1 bidding route, then, it creates a huge amount of stress on the downstream supply chain. At the end of the last person standing in the line is the OEM, the manufacturer. And so all of the value erosion which happens between one bid at 2 rupee 44 paisa and the next bid at 2 rupees finally gets passed on to the solar module manufacturer and the poor EPC company, and they're told to adapt to that benchmark market price, which has been set with no clarity. It's just aspirational bidding which is happening. So I think we'll have to look at also the impact of the way we are currently discovering tariff, and is that conducive to creating long-term ecosystem on manufacturing? That's my limited point.
Yeah, so I think, yes, fair point. And, a lot of debate is happening, and it has been happening for quite some time. But with 2 rupees kind of tariff, we are all surprised, in fact, on that day, that how come it has 2 rupees. But Sai Baba, a very quick intervention from you before I go to the wind sector. But, what is happening that, what is that one thing which you guys are doing so that tariff is, possible at 2 rupees? Some magic, you have been able to do. What is that magic? And also the fact that, while on the supply chain side, there are other things which are important. How important is the port, the facility of port being available to you, particularly in coastal states like Tamil Nadu?
Yes. No, I think fundamentally this 2 rupees, maybe it may not be 2 rupees. 2 rupees is basically how does it work is because the cost of finance. Some of the bidders who have bid and won the bids, their cost of finance is practically zero. And, because the Europe, if you put the money in the banks, you have to the value drops from 100 will become 99 or 99.5 or 99.6. So the major portion of solar manufacturing, solar generation cost is, some of the major cost is interest. When that is practically zero. So there is absolutely no problem. Of course, there is a hedging cost. The rupee value goes down when you are putting it from rupee. So the real cost may be about 4 or 5% because of the hedging. Okay. Even if you get 2% return on your investment, then leaving the money depreciating in Europe or elsewhere, it is better to make an investment here. That's why the people are the sovereign funds, pension funds are coming in a larger way into this. Number one. Number two, of course, there is a competitiveness. When it is open to a competitive bidding, everybody wants to increase their portfolio and all that. And that's one of the reasons. And interesting thing is, in this 2 rupees tariff, it was NTPC, 2 rupees 01 paisa, 400 megawatt. And NTPC cost of finance is definitely higher, and NTPC understands power sector much better than anybody else. because they are the largest producer of power. The cost reduction which is happening in solar from 18 rupees, it came down to 2 rupees. It has happened mainly because there is a technology improvement, okay, efficiency. Number two, scale economies, practically 0 megawatts. India itself has added 35 gigawatt. Scale economies, alternative materials. Earlier we used to use copper. Now, now aluminum is being used, and silver used to be used. Now copper is being used. Alternative materials have come in. Efficiencies. All these things are leading to reduction in the cost. Of course, I agree with what Sujay is saying. A feed-in tariff is a much better way of ensuring that everybody makes some money in the business. If the power generator doesn't make money, the investments will stop flowing at some point in time. It is extremely important a feed-in tariff kind of. I will only take 1 minute. The industry is going to completely transform. It is going to be more of a distributed generation. Solar is going to sit on the roofs, not anymore in the central plants. At 2 rupees, everybody is going to be solar independent. They produce and consume power at the point of consumption. So there is going to be a complete transformation from centralized solar plants. It is going to be more of a distributed power generation.
Absolutely. And that's what we have started to see that. And more states adopting it. But this is a very interesting debate. Let me turn to one question which has come from the audience and to Bloom Energy, Mr. Venkat. The reliability of biogas as a source of energy for electricity and fire gas application, sourcing of solid waste seems to be quite difficult. How do we address this challenge, Mr. Venkat?
I think traditionally it's been a problem, but we have done quite a bit of work in the whole biogas area in the last 2 years in US. Particularly if you think about the dairy waste, which is pretty significant in India, we can certainly use it. We have set up technologies, or we have worked on technology which allows us to collect the mass and convert it into biogas in the most efficient way. For instance, every cow, if you have more than 100 cows, can produce 250 watts of power. So that's already been done. Worked on a landfill, which is taken a large landfill in the Mountain View area in California. So we are converting it to the biogas site. Same thing was worked out. Pretty significant amount of work have been put into wastewater treatment, as well as using the agriculture waste. So traditionally, it has been a problem, but I think we do have the technologies which can allow us to do it in the most effective way and the most cost-effective way. So I think we do have a solution. It requires some infrastructure, but it's certainly doable in India. Particularly in Tamil Nadu, I think we can do it. We already have, with the support of Dr. Mithal and others, we have identified areas where we can actually put biogas plants and take to power using Bloom systems.
Okay, thanks. Over to wind sector experts now on the panel. And I would like to start with Mr. Jayasurya, Wind Energy Council. Overall, what do you see the opportunities for the wind sector? And you touched upon in your address about the offshore wind. And there are only 2 states who are competing against each other for the place of honor. So how do you see the offshore wind particularly coming up, and the role these 2 states, in particular Tamil Nadu, is going to play? And what is there for the investors to actually come in? You are mute, Mr. Jayasurya. If you can unmute yourself first, please.
Yeah, thank you. As you rightly said, Tamil Nadu has a big advantage on the onshore as well as the offshore wind condition. And if you see the wind measurement is happening, as Mr. Sai Baba said, onshore, we are in the number 2 after California. And when you say offshore, Tamil Nadu is almost closest to Denmark. So we have a very good advantage on the offshore development belt. And second thing is how we create this opportunity now. One is that we have a favorable condition to develop the wind offshore thing. And now we also have an interesting part, as Dr. Mithal said, the tower manufacturing, the gears, and the welding. All this, if you see, the welding was the best in Tamil Nadu, but we had BHEL, and Tavakoli was one who started this welding facility. So it all started with Tamil Nadu. So I think we have a very good advantage on this one, on the tower manufacturing. Saying so, as you said, we also have the skill set in developing the engineering skill set on the offshore. So this is one area with the subsea sailing and things. And now what we need to do is to develop the port infrastructure, as my colleague Mr. Joshua said, because the size of the blade is going to go higher, and now for the offshore is going to go. So we need a storage space and infrastructure for the port. I think when we do the port infrastructure better, I think Tamil Nadu will have more of opportunities coming in there. And recently, there are some bilateral discussion going with Denmark, UK, and even the World Bank is looking for more of opportunities come here. I'm sure that a lot of OEMs will start coming and building up their infrastructure and the supply chain. As we are also doing a task force on, as a GVEC, we are also having a GVEC task force. We will surely bring all these components and supply chain, the welding, using the local skills, including the fishermen, which I was saying that, they have a very good skill set, which can be built up for subsea and, transportation and all those things. The biggest advantage, we have this National Oceanographic Institution based in Chennai, and also the National Institute of Wind Energy here. So these two pioneer institutions can contribute towards the very good academia or research activities in the sector. And as you said, on the investment part, once this has been done, there are a lot of investors are keenly coming to India now, and particularly in Tamil Nadu once this offshore comes. So this is my view. Thank you, Amit.
Thank you. So given this kind of a climate and also the offshore kind of opportunity, and of course on the manufacturing side, Peter, if I can invite you, the question is that you are focusing on manufacturing of casting parts for wind industry. So your view on the demand as such for wind turbines and windmill components, how do you see that, and which attracted you to make an investment decision in the country?
If you take Denmark, because now Denmark has been mentioned a few times, and I'm sitting here looking out the window at the green grass, the blue sky, and the very fresh air. We do have a coverage, where we can cover up to more than 50% of the energy by wind. I believe if it's in general renewable energy, but of course as I'm in the wind sector, I strongly believe that wind is a good way to go. But there is for sure a need to go for renewable and make that transition if we need to be able to have a sustainable future where our children's children and so on still can be able to breathe and all these fundamental things. Coming back then to how do I see it in India now, I think that the Indian market for wind especially has been trying to pick up a few times, but I think now it's coming to at least that's what I hear in the market and get of input from the OEMs also, is that now it will pick up. Then we had the Corona situation coming in, which may give a little latency, but I also think it's giving a positive impact that less airplanes in there, less fuel consumed and so on, also give a change on the climate. So the need for renewable energy is there, and then it's coming back to infrastructure and these things, which of course need to be prepared. And then looking from the supplier side, then we have been in the last 10 years or so in a period of taking cost out of the wind business by the OEMs, by improving efficiency of wind turbines and so on, and in the entire supply chain there has been a cost out journey. It has not ended yet, but where it has taken wind to a competitive level cost-wise compared to conventional energy. So I think right now the supply chain, the OEMs and so on, are prepared now really to boost and to supply into the market. So that is for sure good, and that there is a need. And why did we then choose to go this way into India? It's for sure the Indian market, but it's also the as mentioned in my introduction, that the export out of India, where you have a good cost level for labor and so on, and then it can take us to a good level, and despite there's a nice salary level, then you still need to hunt for high productivity and output in the system.
Thanks. And you mentioned about the labor and that being a competitive advantage for India. Let me bring in Joshua, you on this. So globally, there seems to be a scarcity of skilled labor, particularly in the renewable sector. So what are the potential steps the state and this country has taken, which helped you in deciding in the favor of investment here?
Yeah, let me start on a lighter note. Skill, right? So renewable energy typically is something that is meant for the product, right? Sometimes in the renewable industry in India, I think it's true for both solar as well as wind. Even the people are getting circulated renewable within the organizations and within the industry. So it's high time, I think, the governments look at some kind of program wherein with the renewable energy participation, and this holds good even for wind and solar, where we bring in fresh energy, fresh people into the system. Organizations like us will come with a long-term perspective and participate with the government in terms of skills trades development, like the auto industry has done, like many other growing industries have done. Even the fossil fuel power generation industries has done. It's time now to think for renewable in energy industry specific skills, because it's a very highly skilled operation, at least for the wind. So I think that industry participated program can be pretty helpful. In addition, if you would allow me, I just want to add a couple of more comments to what the other wind manufacturers had given on the earlier question. In terms of promotion, there are two aspects. I think Mr. Jayasurya covered the aspect of wind industry in terms of the market potential being in India. The other aspect is, for us, we are actually an example of a make in India from a manufacturing side of the industry. So from a manufacturing side, one way that the government could consider us is, especially with the lessons learned during the pandemic, that please declare worldwide Indian renewable energy industry also to be an essential service.
Okay.
That could really give us an insurance cover and a opportunity to run our manufacturing, because it's just not a matter of choice. It's a question of global competitiveness. For example, we 100% export to countries where these renewable energy products are actually essential services. So there is a mismatch there, and it's not possible for us to be competitive globally if we are going to be stopping our manufacturing operations during whatever crisis we have to meet the commitments that we have globally. That's one area. Sure. On the oversized components thing, which is unique to wind industry, we also want to see more of the actual ground level implementation of the parks. The various parks, because proximity to the ports from a manufacturing made in India perspective, not only for implementation on sites within India, as somebody was talking about supply chain, that also is a key for our competitiveness in the global environment.
Sure. Thank you so much. There are many questions which have come from the audience. My request, because we have just 6 minutes, and I will also have 2-3 questions to Dr. Mithal later on. So be very brief, and because there are some very quick kind of questions and answers. So to Bloom, there is a question: is there any plan to make microgrids in Chennai for Bloom? And any plans to make SOFC in Chennai? Mr. Venkat.
A quick answer for that is we currently been working with Dr. Mithal and their team to introduce us into Chennai area. So we definitely have a potential of introducing the microgrid. In terms of manufacturing, Chennai is probably one of the places where we are thinking about long term. We have to kind of cross a certain threshold of business in India. So we are actually trying to get all the customers. COVID-19 had certainly stopped us with entry into the market space in India. Certainly, we are planning on expanding our business next year. If you cross the threshold, we will be thinking about manufacturing in different places. Chennai is definitely a preferred location for us.
Perfect. One question is, how can overseas companies help manufacturers in Tamil Nadu to take their product across the world? Is there a platform where we could interact with TN manufacturers? And this is Green Trends from Australia. Who wants to have this question? Anybody in the panel, somebody wants to respond to this question?
Well, I think I can take this question because it's a question which somebody has to facilitate these interactions between interested parties. And this is a good idea. We are making a new single window portal, and I'll take this opportunity to also tell that the current single window portal does only 34 services. We are actually adding roughly 200 odd services to the new single window portal, which will get launched very shortly, which will make the entire G2B faceless, paperless, and transparent. So we will try to add this kind of interaction portal in that. So that's a good suggestion. Thank you so much for that.
Okay, so Dr. Mithal, there are two things which are important. It has come from the audience, and one is on the GST side of it. The question is,
I know inverted solar structure, inverted duty structure.
Inverted duty structure, yeah.
Yeah, this is actually a very often question coming up. I think this is, since it's a federal matter as well, and it has to be raised in the the federal the GST Council. We will pass on this remarks to. We are going to pass it on to the GST Council for consideration, and also we might take up this in our new industrial policy, which is coming up in appropriate format.
Perfect. Thank you so much, all the panel. In fact, a number of queries are there, and I can assure all the audience, thank you so much for being participative in this session. And, I have the queries. I'll pass it on to the organizers, CII and the TN guidance in this case. And, they will pass it on to the panelists concerned. And as they come, they will post it on the website. Very excellent session. I'll say that we discussed across the spectrum of renewable energy, solar, wind, and also biogas, and the kind of investment opportunities which are there, and at the same time the issues and the challenges, some of them being federal in nature and some of them Tamil Nadu specific as well. We are all brainstorming on it. We are all sector experts along with the policymakers, the federal and state level, and I am sure that going ahead, as the Prime Minister said, $20 billion is the kind of investment opportunity in the country. And the states like Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, and others, they are, leading the sector per se. And I'm sure that we'll find the solution for some of the challenges which Sujoy mentioned, others mentioned, and we look forward to a brighter future in the renewable energy space. With this, thank you so much, all the panelists. Thank you, all the audience, for being there, patiently listening, and throwing the questions at all of us. And over to the organizers. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.